Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I'm Star Smart. Let's begin. The struggle for Ambazonia's liberation is not in the dense forest of his homeland or through the thunder of gunfire. It echoes in the broken bones of the silenced, in the burnt taxis of Mile 16, in the cries of infants held as bargaining chips by colonial administrators, and in the bloodied hands of mobs fueled by state-sponsored poetry. Today's headlines offer no peace. Instead, they expose the raw, ugly face of a colonial structure that continues to treat Ambazonians not as people, but as problems to be controlled, coerced, and erased. In Boya's Mile 16, a region known for resisting the call to silence every Monday, lives were lost, bodies burned, and gunfire tore through the streets, not because of war alone, but because the ghost town protests, a powerful symbol of Ambazonian unity, dismantled from within. The colonial regime's subtle campaign of influence has infiltrated communities, turning citizens into pawns, pushing some to violate the very tools of non-violent resistance, and inviting brutal consequences. But then what happens when the people forget the meaning of their silence? Meanwhile, in Ngaketunja, the colonial SDO has crossed yet another line, detaining innocent civilians. We'll see what this and more is about after we get the prime headlines. Well, these are the prime headlines on Undaunted tonight. A deadly clash in Boya's Mile 16 as the defiance of Monday goes down, sparks gunfire and fire outbreaks. Hostage politics is a question we're yet to unravel, with the colonial SDO detaining innocent civilians, including children, to pressure the Ambazonian state army. Amazonian refugee brutalized in Yaoundé over Baseless witchcraft claim, a stark reminder of La Republic's systemic disdain and bigotry. Colonial checkpoint turning tragic after Gendarme slaps an elderly man and dies shortly after. And on the African scene, we see at least 101 dead in Eastern Cape floods as rescue efforts continue. The Chadian opposition leader's success Masra ends hunger strike amid health concerns. And then on the rest of the globe, Senate approves Trump 3.3 trillion tax and spending plan, sending bills to House, as well as warning of looming health and food aid for Sudanese refugees amid funding crisis by the World Food Program. Let's get the news in full details. Boya experienced a violent Monday evening in its Mile 16 Bolifamba neighborhood, where the incident resulted in one fatality, 2 injuries, and the destruction of 4 vehicles and a motorcycle. These were the consequences of non-compliance with the Ambazonian state-enforced seat-at-home order. Heavy gunfire shattered the evening calm in Mile 16, Bolifamba Boya on Monday, following widespread defiance of the weekly ghost town observance. The confrontation led to the tragic death of a taxi driver, sadly, with injuries to at least 2 civilians and the destruction of 4 taxis and a motorcycle by fire. The Monday Ghost Town operation, which is a long-standing civil resistance strategy enforced by the Ambazonian State Army, is observed across Ambazonia as a powerful symbol of non-violent protest against the ongoing occupation by La République du Cameroon. It is not merely a day of silence, but a weekly expression of a people's resolve to reclaim their sovereignty through collective civil disobedience. However, certain neighborhoods such as Mile 16 in Boya have increasingly become notable outliers in the unified stand. Despite the symbolism and strategic intent behind the ghost town action, portions of the population, either out of fear, economic desperation, or covert manipulation, continue to violate the directive. This defiance is not occurring in a vacuum. Eyewitnesses' accounts confirmed that gunfire erupted in the vicinity of Mile 16 Mall, which is a zone that has seen repeated flare-ups since the Ambazonian War escalated in 2017. Amateur footage captured scenes of destruction, with vehicles ablaze and civilians fleeing for safety. Unconfirmed reports indicate that a bike rider sustained a gunshot wound to the leg, while another individual gravely injured. A taxi driver tragically was caught in his vehicle as it went up in flames and did not survive. Security updates are still unfolding, but the incident has once again placed Mile 16 at the center of the violent resistance, a reflection of deeper infrastructure within a population caught between loyalty to the liberation struggle and allegiance to colonial norms. Well, according to reports, the growing pattern of ghost town defiance in specific zones is not organic. It instead appears increasingly tied to a broader psychological and economic warfare strategy employed by the colonial regime through indirect incentives, disinformation campaigns, and targeted intimidation. The occupiers seek to erode the spirit of resistance, turning civilians into unwitting tools in the dismantling of their own movement. The disregard for ghost town is not merely a matter of civic inconvenience. It has become a subtle yet dangerous form of collaboration, a bridge in the wall of collective civil protest that empowers the colonial narrative and undermines Ambazonia's unity in purpose. Well, as one local resident noted off record, they have made it seem like sitting at home is cowardice, but showing up and pretending life is normal is what's truly betraying us. Now, while the use of violence is neither to be condoned, the current state of affairs demand a critical reflection, not just on the tragic consequences of these confrontations, but on the underlying forces attempting to chip away at the symbolic and strategic strength of the ghost town tradition. Now, how can a nation move forward when parts of its bodies are pulled backwards by strings it cannot see? Is a question that lingers. Well, we have in the studio Barrister Mbeseha. Good evening, Barrister. It's always a pleasure, Barrister. We're looking at the unfoldings in Boya specifically, and in certain other parts of Ambazonia where the defiance of the ghost town seems to be a new norm, and the Ambazonian State Army not relenting in showing the consequences of defying the Civil Disobedience Act that could do greater good if the masses and Ambazonian population obeyed. I'm looking at the scenario here. I would like to get your take on it to the ASA and, of course, to the Ambazonian civilians who think defying the ghost town is a wise idea.
Country Sunday did not start yesterday. Let us revisit it and say when it started, and then why we're here, and how we got to where we are. Back early 2017, I think, when Detains said, come Monday, you will understand who owns British Southern Cameroon. That was 2017. At that time, there was nothing like a government. But progressively we moved up to the government, ending 2017, October, during the fourth conclave. The fourth conclave that held in Zaire on set up a government. At the time they call it interim government, that's matured today into full-fledged government in exile, stated among its resolutions that goes down shall be maintained. That was 2017, October. And this government has come in place and we have kept the spirit and the letter of the conclave, and most particularly of the ghost towns. Why the ghost towns we have explained here many times. Ambazonia is not something in the air. It's a place geographically identifiable with a population. And with the population, they have a government. And this government presides over a given people. And so the population that lives in Ambazonia must be compliant to the rules that the government has put in place. Non-compliance has consequences. What happened in March 16? March 16 is in Boya, and that's the headquarters of our government. That is the capital city of our government. If 3, 4 taxis were burned, 4, 5, 6 people died, it reminds us that there are thousands upon thousands of people in March 16. And if only 3, 4, 5 died, or 2, 3, 4, 5 taxis were burned, it shows that this is a tiny minority which is trying to show defiance. They are trying to defy our authority. And defiance has a consequence, which we tell the people, a government cannot exist without the population. The population owes allegiance to the government. And that allegiance includes respecting the rules or laws put in place. And so that is where we are. At least we know that there are so many different groups that came to fight for Ambazonia. But almost all the groups that I know agree to the ghost town. They agree to the country Sunday as a very important tool in the struggle. And this will take me a little bit further, because there are other events that are coming out that this defiance is going to include it. You see, we are now in the election period in Cameroon. Between now and October, there will be elections. And we've seen people telling us the story of what we have to do. We have to go and register to vote. We have to belong to 1 or 2 parties or whatever you think. Those who say those sort of things to Ambazonians are missing the point. They have probably not understood what the struggle is all about. The struggle is about our institutions being restored. The struggle is about our revival of our statehood. And if it is a revival of our own statehood, what does an election in a neighboring country mean to us? It means a lot. But it doesn't mean that we have to participate. It means a lot. As far as we're concerned, and as the people is concerned, we're 2 different countries. What do the elections mean to us? The elections mean to us that we have to take judicial notice that something is happening over there. Just like we took judicial notice in Nigeria, they elected Tinubu. We take judicial notice of what is happening there. And among us, we know that come October, I've said it before, come October, whoever wins the election there, fraudulently or appointed from France, will meet us as a group, as a united government. Not defiance is tolerated here. Go vote there, I've said, if you want to go and vote. Go stay in Douala, go stay in Yaoundé, go stay in Baseless, wherever you want to go. But as far as Ambazonia is concerned, we have only one concern. Ambazonians who say they want us to sit and agree. They don't understand the problem. By now, every politician in Yaoundé, even in France, understands exactly what Ambazonians want. Simple story put, one sentence, Ambazonians want the independence. They are not going to get their independence through one party in Yaoundé, be it Kamto, be it Bia, be it Akeremuna, be it Chiroma. You are not going to get it there through the elections. We're not going to get it through the elections, presidential, parliamentary, or whatever form of elections. No, elections there don't concern us. We cannot change the consequences, but we have to deal with who they elect there. And those of them who dare win elections there or appointed there have to understand one thing, that they are going to meet Ambazonians. Like you do not, they are going to confront Ambazonians and address why they are fighting with them. As simple as that. So stop this debate of asking people to go and register to vote. I've explained here that even the so-called Eleka, if they operate in Ambazonia, they are enemies. They are legitimate targets. They are defiant. They are just like the people who try to defy in 16. That's why I put this story together. These people who are doing these elections are trying to defy our authority, be it by disobeying ghost town, or by trying to come and register people to vote, or coming to campaign. Well, what happened in 16 is just I've said. It's just one evidence. There's a consequence to defiance. Because the government has authority, our ASA will do what they can, what is possible to enforce our rules, to enforce our own orders. And so, be advised if you want to be alive. Be advised if you want to be safe, not to attempt to defy the authority of Amazonia. As simple as that. You do it, there's a consequence for your defiance. If you very much want to do it, go live there. If you want to drive your taxis, your motorbikes on Mondays, go drive them in Kongsamba. Go drive them in Douala. We have nothing to do with that. But try to do in Boya, in Bamenda, in Kumba, anywhere in Ambazonia, you are a legitimate target because you're disobeying the law of the land. This thing was not done, was not put in place by us, by me and you, by this government. I say it was started way back in 2016, and we trace it to Detains, who said publicly on the media in Cameroon, come Monday, you will know who owns southern Cameroon. And from then, goes down, started. Monday came, and they saw it with their own eyes. It has continued. And so that is the history behind it. Those who attempt to defy it, you are risking your own lives. You are risking your own property. Is that worth the trouble? Rather than stay home and take a rest, you want to show how defiant you are. And so again, that is a lesson for everybody to learn. Most importantly, for those who live in Buea and the surroundings. You can try to defy us in some bushes around, but you cannot come and defy us in the face of our own administration, right at the capital city of Buea. No, you have to pay the price, and that's the price they paid for. We have no regrets for that, and we have no apologies for that. Over to you.
All right, Barrister Mbeseha, while we see Ambazonians or the colonial proxy influencing some Ambazonians to defy the ghost town and putting them in harm's way, we see yet another direct form of these colonial proxies putting Ambazonians directly in harm's way. Now, in what legal framework does the abduction of unarmed civilians, including children as young as 3 months old, become a legitimate instrument of negotiation? What law justifies using innocent lives as bait in a military standoff? Well, these are the unsettling questions surrounding the recent arrest and ongoing detention of 7 villagers in Ngoketunja County. Now, in a concerning development, 7 villagers in Ngoketunja have been detained by authorities, sparking fears of their safety and well-being. The Colonial SDO for Ngoketunja County, Henderson Ketongkunge, has ordered the abduction of unarmed and innocent civilians who have been in detention for over a week now. Sources confirm that the civilians, including a 68-year-old woman and 2 infants, have been held without charges for over a week, not because they pose a threat, but because the colonial administration is seeking leverage over the Amazonian State Army. The goal? To secure the release of the Colonial Brigade commander of Babesi, who was captured by the ASA, the Ambazonian State Army. Now, the detainees include Madam Seraph Wu, who is 68 years old, Julius Weyang, who is 39 years old, Jocelyn Undum, who is 22 years old, and a mother of a 3-month-old baby, which includes 2 children as well, a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old baby, with 3 other unnamed family members. Now, this disturbing move appears to be less about law enforcement and more about psychological warfare. By abducting civilians who have no known involvement in the conflict, the colonial administration is weaponizing vulnerability using human shield as bargaining chips. Now, if this isn't sabotage, if this isn't hostage taking, what then is this? This drastic and erratic action by the colonial SDO suggests another deeper perception, suggests something deeper, which is a clear recognition that the Ambazonian State Army places high value on Ambazonian lives, which is the only reason they can make this human bait. Unlike the occupying regime, which routinely brutalizes and dehumanizes civilians, the Ambazonian State Army has consistently expressed its duty to protect its very own people. So now, by placing innocent lives in danger, the colonial regime is trying to corner the Ambazonian State Army, attempting to exploit their humanity, their discipline, and their conscience. It is a cynical ploy, force them into a moral dilemma where any outcome risks the lives of innocent, hoping this will bend the wheel of the Ambazonian State Army. But then, by international law, particularly the Fourth Geneva Convention, expressly prohibits the taking of hostages, the collective punishment of civilians, and the detention of non-combatants for coercive purposes. These acts are not just morally reprehensible, they are war crimes, and children under Article 38 of the Convention of the Rights of Child are to be protected from all forms of violence and exploitation, especially in armed conflict. Yet, here we are, infants being held in unsafe, unlawful detention. The cries echoing behind boundaries not meant for them. This isn't just a security incident. It is a reflection of the colonial playbook at work. The strategy is clear. Paint the Ambazonian forces as aggressors, break their morale by endangering the very people that they defend, and coerce them into submission, not through strength or diplomacy, but through cowardice cloaked in power. One pertinent question one cannot help but ask is, when a regime must clutch infants to bargain with soldiers, who then is the real terrorist? This crisis is a call to the international community, human rights watchdogs, and all people of conscience. The longer that this continues unchecked, the more the lines between modern governance and colonial tyranny begins to blur. Should Ambazonian civilians continue to be pawns in anyone's game while the world remains silent? Is a question. Well, history will remember that those who dare to risk the lives of the weak to mask the failures of the powerful is something that would not be forgotten. Now, Barrister Mbeseha, looking at the intricacies here and the fact that not only does this act break certain global and even national laws and conventions, looking at this fact here, where do you think the international community should come in, looking at the situation on ground? Or are there no laws binding La République?
Well, of course, there are laws binding La République and anybody else. The question is, should the international community not come in? Well, they should have come in long before now. They should have come in long time before now. Because what they have done now with that population is not the first time. They have not arrested those people. No, they have not arrested. They are just taken as hostages. There's a difference between a hostage and an arrest. They have not, those guys they have taken into custody have committed no offense. By their own explanation themselves, the explanation of the colonial officer, their mates were holding them so that they can help us bring back our lost soldier. That's hostage. Nothing short of that. Hostage taking is against international law. Why are they so concerned with their captured soldier, not adopted? Their captured soldier was a legitimate target. He was a military guy, disguising in the community to hurt his opponents, the opponents. Therefore, it's a legitimate target. It could be taken at night, can be taken away in the day, in the night. As long as you can identify him, our ASAs were right to take him into custody. They are even right to do anything to him because it's a legitimate target. Back to your question. What is the role of the civilian You see, there's so much mix up in this story. They have not just taken the population. Among the population they have taken, they include children. But an extra mile, which has not existed elsewhere in the world, is babies. They have taken babies 3 months, 2 months, breastfeeding babies who have been breastfed as part of their hostages. To the best of my knowledge, I don't remember one country that has done that in the world during war. And so they only aggravate their situation by not only taking ordinary hostages, but by taking babies as hostages to get them to satisfy their political or their military needs. And so this is a war crime multiplied by I don't know what figure you can put it there. Should the international community come in, they ought to have come in long ago, I've said. Because again, I've said this is not the first time. 2-3 years ago, they had a certain Moja in Boya, whose role was to go around and adopt pregnant women, take them hostage. Because these women were alleged to have been friends, girlfriends or women friends, to some fighters some years back. They took them hostages, took them to jail, the women got back there. That was hostage taking. Because the idea was that the poor woman would call the former boyfriend, oh, they have taken me hostage, come out. And they didn't do it. And so this has been going on. Cameroon is a lawless country that acts with impunity. But again, there's always a limit to the impunity that you can do. One moment you think that you're so strong, and you do what you think you can do. But there comes a time when the international community will act. And I will say, for example, we have seen the international community led by South Africa to act against Israel in the last 1 year because of the Israeli blockade of Gaza. They're not acted before the Israeli conflict existed since 1948. The international community pretended to close its eyes. But there came a time South Africa did not just act. They caused Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, to be indicted for war crimes at the ICC. As we speak, charges are hanging over his head. He can pretend to run east or west. Those charges are hanging on his head. Hanging over his head. And as far as war crimes are concerned, they are there until you die. You cannot say, well, I was the Jew yesterday, I'm no longer the Jew. Mr. Jew, whatever thing you're acting for, in fact, you're the one that the ISIS is looking for. For example, Bankwi, Uhib Dankwi has taken retirement. But all the war crimes Bankwi committed in active service are still hanging on him if he's indicted today. So the Jew, you have nowhere to hide. I don't know where you even know what you're doing, but you have nowhere to hide. I'll be surprised that tomorrow, Yaoundé, like they always do, they will deny you. They'll say they didn't authorize you to do that. Are you going to answer for it alone? Again, this is the reason why we'll fight. This is the reason why we'll cry out to the world. This is why we'll cry out to the world in different forms, different manners, taking it back to what we said a few seconds ago, to the Monday post towns. To let the world know that something terribly unusual is happening here. To let the whole world know that we don't live in a normal world. There are crises all over the world, but the ones in Ambazonia have taken a different dimension. To the extent that 3-month-old babies, 2-month-old babies can be taken hostage to satisfy the colonial empire, to satisfy the new colonialism, the black on black colonialism. We have not heard white on white colonialism before. We heard black on black, which is taking a different dimension where babies become hostages. And there's no impunity for these things. Again, the time is coming, sooner or later, these people will be held accountable. And the crimes that they are committing are imprescriptible. As long as they are alive, those crimes are imprescriptible. They will follow them to their graves. When you enter your grave, you can be excused. And then the judgment can be left at God. But as long as you live on earth here, no matter where you're retired, wherever you're hiding, they will follow you to that end. And so hostage taking is illegal under international law. I don't even know where it is found in Cameroon penal code, if it is not even found there. We must be there. Because I don't know any community, what the international community has not yet adopted is something specific to taking babies as hostages and taking women as hostages, taking mothers, just for belonging to the community, for not helping you catch the man you don't like. And so again, this is horrible. This is unacceptable. It should never happen to human beings. This is only the reason why we fight again. We let the international community know these things. Where is the international community? Yaoundé there. It's not something living in the air. If you go to Yaoundé, you're going to see the French embassy there. You're going to see the British embassy there, the American embassy. They represent the international community. And so if they don't see this, or they see this and pretend to close their eyes, they may, like they've always done for centuries, for decades. They close their eyes on what Israel was doing to Palestine. But one day, things came to the eyes open and they say, no, enough is enough. Too much is too much. And so again, then the international community see what is happening to us. When the time came, Moja was abandoned. We don't know where he is. And the duo sitting there will be abandoned. Banqui is nowhere to be found. Again, hostage taking is a crime. This is not an arrest. They admitted themselves that they took the people hostage with the claim that they will help them go and help them bring their captured military guy. Which captured military guy I've just said was a legitimate target because wearing plain clothes to infiltrate the community in order to get information, in order to hide from your own crimes. It's a war crime by itself. A legitimate target one caught. And so that's what it is. We think that one day, sooner or later, the international community will help. If they don't help, we'll do our best. Because we did in my system. We'll bring them down where it is possible. We'll wound them if it is possible. We'll do what we can. Because fighting for liberation is fighting for self-survival. Over to you.
Thank you, Barrister Mbeseha. Well, this war of liberation has indeed had its own cost. And for Ambazonians, one of the things away from the daily fear and uncertainty is displacement. People leaving Ambazonia to neighboring countries to feel safe, or even journeying to the far west to feel safe. But sadly, for Ambazonians, La Republique is far from a safe haven. Now, when the war forced a young man named Nzi Silas to flee from Nkambe in southern Cameroon in 2017, he hoped that Yaoundé, the capital of neighboring La Republique, would offer safety, dignity, and a chance to rebuild. But what he found instead was a bitter truth. Even within supposed refuge, Amazonians are treated like second-class humans, perpetual outsiders, and easy targets for hatred, masked as tradition. On June 20th, a routine day turned into a nightmare when Silas, now a well-known fish vendor in Marsha Tudi, was accused of an absurd act of witchcraft, stealing a man's penis with a handshake. His accuser, which is a longtime acquaintance who later confessed to being driven by jealousy and resentment. What followed was not just a personal attack. It was a collective public lynching. Over 500 people gathered, unleashing brutal mob violence on Silas with sticks, stones, slaps, and kicks. He was dragged through the streets like an animal, not because of any evidence, not even getting a word in his defense, but out of sheer cruelty, because he bore the label that so many fear and hate in silence, Ambazonian. This case is not just about an outrageous superstition. It is about the deep-rooted xenophobic tendencies in La Republique society, especially towards Ambazonian, southern Cameroon. Silas was not believed. He was not protected. He was not even heard. And he was treated not as a fellow citizen seeking refuge from a war his own government ignited. Even after the Atudi, Gendarme took both Silas and his accuser into custody, and a medical examination proved that the accusation was entirely false. Silas remained unsafe. A mob still gathered outside his home, was raided, robbed, and nearly set on fire by those emboldened not just by the rumor, but by a sheer disdain for who he is and where he is from. 8 of those responsible have been arrested, but that doesn't change the fact Silas survived, barely. Others may not. Others have not. Now, this is what it means to be an Ambazonian in La Republique today. A refugee, a scapegoat, and a victim all in one. Well, without technicians, I'd like to take a look at this video if it's available. The video of him testifying what this ordeal was like.
All una way, una we take una time. I salute all una for this house. I first of all want thank all una way, una we take una time for post me for Facebook, for WhatsApp, all una way una post me. I really pray say God could really bless una. I really want tell una wait way be really happen for market A2G. The boy way he really accused me say I don't thief in Bangala. So now just of my business colleague, so my business partner way he ever supply me plastic for market. As I just come for morning time, I see me the boy. I greet the boy as he been at my person way they ever supply me. As I don't greet the boy go 15 minutes now after the boy just come up can't tell me say in Bangala don't lost. I think say the boy the play na play. Now so as now so people then join your ear say Mbangala all man just climb on top me, start they beat me. Yeah, now with the help of Gendarme now. Thank God say Gendarme they be they corner me. They carry me now so as they come out for me, say we want go for post now. So camera them. People then just come out now with camera talk say Mbangala they start they snap me, they beat me, and they think they start they beat me where they never yet know the side of the story. And they never even know whether the boy in Bangala no loss or never loss. They just start they insult me, they beat me. Now before one race now for posted the police Gendarme the A2G. Now they carry the boy, they go with you for room, they check in Bangala, all thing be dey fine. They carry you again, they go with you for hospital general for check whether any of the thing don't ever lost. All thing be dey fine. Now they carry me back, they just go put me for some site. Yeah, now so as I be there for Gendarmerie, I no be know. The population them die people them they team up go for my house. They just broke the door into two. They scatter all money while we keep on for them. My television, gas split, all thing they scatter and they remove all thing while we get them for us. I mean all thing, all my capital. They enter my marketplace to that very day. They scatter all my marketplace, back them for crazy fish. So I be just come for bush. I put them for there. They tear them, back them from Bungawa. We get them. They tear and they almost be one burn the place. And my sister, them, all my brother, they ever supplied them Janga. They beat all of them. Now so security not there for me for A2G for something with me I never do. So I did beg.
Oh, well, we see that this is what it means to be Ambazonian in La Republique today. A refugee, a scapegoat, and a victim all in one. While war and displacement pushed thousands to seek for safety, to flee the southern Cameroons, the very country that they could have called home. We see lack of safety in countries, especially like La Republique. La Republique cities is often met with suspicion, mockery, and as this case shows, mob justice that goes to show injustice and hate for Ambazonians. It goes unchecked until it is nearly too late. Well, Silas and Zab nearly survived. But then how can one flee war only to meet public execution in the name of superstition? Where is the state when its so-called citizens are hunted for being different? Well, a pattern, not an exception. La Republique claims to claim Southern Cameroons as part of its own, but then it avoids to save Ambazonians in its own corridors. Silas's story is not isolated. It is emblematic of the everyday risks Southern Cameroonians face, both at home and in exile. The hostility is systemic, the disdain is learned, and the discrimination is tolerated in borders of La Republique, until the Amazonian people are free to live with dignity in their own land and no longer forced to beg for safety in hostile territories. Stories like Silas's, sadly, will keep coming into the news. This is not a refuge crisis. It is a crisis of humanity, one where dignity and identity alone can get you killed. Well, Barrister Mbeseha, we've heard one too many times that it is not safe for Ambazonians in La Republic. Now, to those Ambazonians like the likes of Silas and Zah, who have built a fortune for themselves, trying to flee the war and have built a fortune for themselves in neighboring countries like La Republic, what do you advise looking at the state at which this xenophobic and bigotry acts are going? What would be your advice to them?
Well, if we must advise them, the problem is these people are internally, they are supposed to have escaped from war. When confronted with war, you go to where you think you can be safe. Sometimes even go to the nearest place where you think you can be safe for a while. And so they are the young man's escape to Yaoundé or to anywhere else was not voluntary. It was not a walk to that place. They escaped from danger, but it turned out to be like what we say in Pidgin English, falling from the frying pan. They got to Yaoundé. Today is where the president lives. That's the quartier where the president lives. Etudi. So that area called Etudi is supposed to have the best security. The problem here is not this guy. It's not that this guy was accused of doing something he did not do. The problem is, what did the security people do to prevent the lynching? After being falsely accused for anything, if you find yourself in the hands of the police or the gendarmes or whatever thing they call it in Yaoundé there, they are supposed to provide you security to stop the lynching. That they don't just they don't just provide physical security for your physical human being, which they claimed. They detained him for fear of being lynched. But they should have gone further to make sure that his property was secured. Because they knew, or they ought to know, that without seeing him, they would take vengeance on whatever thing he has. This they did not do. Was it an error? Was it deliberate? Was it a mistake or what? I don't know. But security measures require that they should have protected his property. They did not protect any property according to that gentleman's story. They ransacked whatever thing he had and stole whatever he had and ran away with it. And what is interesting is that the next day after, or 2 days, I don't know how many days after, the gendarmes and police come back there and say, oh, we're arresting the people who did this. Arresting them where? The thing is that there was a real criminal there, he was sitting there waiting for them to come. You can tell his boss to dwell out or some other place where he liked. Are you going to catch him? Was it manipulation? Was it deliberate or error? I don't know. But I would think that the police, the gendarmes bear a chunk of the responsibility for their failures. Notwithstanding, these guys are from a foreign country. The host country where refugees escape to, they are bound to provide you security for your own life and your property, whatever you have left. So whether you like Ambazonia or not, if they escape war and came to you, just like they escape and went to Nigeria, just like they escaped and went to Ghana, it becomes the responsibility of the home government to take care of you. And then most importantly, to provide you security. Because as an escapee, as a stranger, you are very, very vulnerable. You don't even know where to hide. You don't even know where to hide. And Karim, for example, he might not even, he wants to go to the police, for example, and then they might ask you for identity card. An identity card which you don't even have. If you had one, war might have destroyed it. And so it is a failure of the system, total failure of the system, either deliberately or inadvertently. But that's the victim. He's lucky to be alive. He has survived, at least with his physical self, though he has lost almost everything, if not everything, that he ever had to live on. What is the advice that we should give to these people, to our brothers and sisters who find themselves there, anywhere, be it in Yaoundé, be it in Bafoussam, be it in Bunda, be it in Nigeria? You have to act with prudence. You have to be your own security. Find protection among your own brothers and sisters, not among the enemies. Because according to his story, if the story is true, he barely showed his friend, that's his customer, a video And they came and said, oh, I've lost my Bangala. What does losing Bangala mean in the tradition? That they cut it off, but it's still hanging there, it is no longer active. What do they really mean by that? It's a frivolous complaint. And then I got to them, to the hospital, the Bangala is still hanging there, it's lost nothing. Even if it became inactive. Could that gentleman or another person just show you a video make you sexually impotent, sexually inactive? You can no longer sustain an erection because you saw a video. And that man is not the manufacturer of the video. He just watched it like another person. And so it just go to show the lawlessness of the society to which this group belong. Again, the guy who made these false allegations was not kept in custody. He's a criminal. They took him to the hospital to everything and found that he was still intact. Rather than keep him for false allegations, they let him go. And then they kept the victim in custody. During which custody, he who went free used that opportunity to satisfy his previous need. Went and ransacked the guy's house, organized his things to be stolen. And so it is total lack of security measures. It's total incompetence in the security services. Because that guy who made the allegation, by their own mouth, they took him to the hospital, there's nothing there, they took him into the room and they searched and found that his Bangala was still hanging there. He should have been locked up for false allegation. He should have been the one to be charged, to be set on free on bail. That would have restrained his brothers and sisters, his friends and allies, from going further to do what they were doing. They didn't. They set him free. They kept the victim of the accusation in custody. And the enemy used that opportunity to do what they really wanted to do. And so it is unacceptable. It's wrong. It should never have occurred to us. But again, it is occurring to us because we have been brought under these circumstances of a war we did not provoke. This gentleman had no reason to go to Italy. If Italy had not declared war on us, he's just selling food from the farm. He would have made his own farm wherever he can from me. He wouldn't have gone to Italy. And so this is one of the reasons why we fight. Luckily, it's happening in Italy. Italy is the headquarters where Mr. Biya, the headman of that country, lives. And if there's no security in Italy, anywhere in Italy, how do you expect them to provide you security in Bamenda, where we've been talking about killing? In Gokutunje, in Dab, in Mamfe, or in Boya? It's a country totally devoid of security. It is a country that we don't need to be with them. If we must be their neighbors, they will come to learn how to provide security from us. But since that is not yet the time, we have to continue to fight until we free ourselves from this dungeon, from this hell that we were walked into by the United Nations and our accomplices. Over to you.
That indeed it is a system that has failed, and this is just a cause of the systemic failure, as you said, and not just that, but also the lawlessness in La Republique. And sadly, it's very likely that these Ambazonians will get no justice, just like many other Ambazonians in La Republique, who in even worse instances have lost their lives. But then when we talk about the systemic failure of La Republique, we also see a young Colonial gendarme officer meeting a mysterious end after reportedly slapping an elderly road user at a checking point known more for its corrupt extortion practices than for maintaining law and order, just like others. Now, the incident occurred at the entrance of Bogo in the Diamare division of La Republique's Far North, a region already burdened by poverty, neglect, and militarized abuse. Now, what should have been a routine inspection quickly spiraled into a scene of public humiliation, outrage, and untimely death. Now, witnesses say that the checkpoint, like many others scattered around even Ambazonia away from colonial territories, or encrusted into Ambazonia, functioned less as a legitimate security post and more as an extortion hub where travelers are routinely harassed, fined without justification, and forced to bribe their way through. Now, this pattern of abuse has become so normalized that any resistance or questioning often results in intimidation or violence. Now, on this day, the target was an older man believed to be in his late 60s, For reasons not entirely clear, the man either failed to understand or notice the colonial checkpoint rope stretched across the road. Despite this likely oversight, a young colonial gendarme approached aggressively, reportedly slapping the elderly man in full view of others, and immediately demanding a monetary fine for crossing the rope. Now, the response from the elderly road user was calm, but chilling. Witnesses recounted this elderly man saying, "You'll never again raise your hand against anyone." And moments later, the elderly man continued on his journey. The young gendarmerie, still at the checkpoint, suddenly collapsed. He was rushed to the Bogo District Hospital, where he was pronounced dead shortly after his arrival. Now, the cause of death remains unconfirmed, but many in the community believe the old man's words carried some sort of weight beyond the physical, perhaps divine justice, ancestral retribution, or supernatural consequences. We cannot say for certain. The cause of the gendarmerie's death is still unconfirmed. Now, while official channels have remained silent on the matter, the tragic outcome has ignited renewed outrage across the region. For many, Ambazonians especially, and other marginalized people under the La République regime, the incident is a grim reminder of the unchecked power and cruelty of colonial security forces. Now, where uniformed men harass, extort, and brutalize civilians with near or total impunity. And this is even not an isolated case. These so-called checkpoints have become hotspots of daily exploitation. Bribery is not the exception. It is the rule. Officers often prey on traders, transporters, and even elderly road users, demanding sums of imaginary offenses or simply asserting dominance. Now, whether or not supernatural forces played a role in the gendarmerie's sudden death, one thing is clear. The people are tired, and the land seems to be speaking right back. In Ambazonia, thought, disrespecting elders and doing so with the arrogance of a colonial badge invites the wrath of justice beyond what any court could deliver. And we could only see this as just that. We wonder just how many more must fall for the colonial regime realizes that its brute grip is soaked in shame, corruption, and the silence, curses of the oppressed. But then we'll leave this one for Barrister Mbeseha to give his final thoughts on just before we let him go. This is the scenario. We can't still say for certain what happened, but this elderly road user made that statement, and just after, this young gendarmerie who slapped the elderly man just collapsed. And that was the end of him. And this now brings us to look at more checkpoints where extortion and lives are lost. Not gendarmerie this time, but innocent civilian lives are lost because this gendarmerie feel the life of every road user who passes every checkpoint is in their hands. And in this case, it is a reversal. It is a reversal of the scenario. This time, a gendarmerie loses his life. Would like to get your thoughts on this before we let you go.
Well, let me start from the loss of life. When this guy lost his life, everybody who was there, who knows the people who were in that environment, believes, almost every one of them should believe that he died because this man possessed some mystical powers. And I wish we had those mystical powers. I wish other citizens had them. We will eliminate every checkpoint on the road. Because the population, this is happening in northern Cameroon, not in Ambazonia. Because the population is held hostage to these officially trained criminals. I've said this many times, 10 times, 20 times before. There are all these checkpoints on the road in the name of law and order. Throughout my life, when I lived in Boya as a lawyer, from 1983, for more than 20 years, I never saw them bring anybody to court for any offense that they caught on the road during those checkpoints. Nobody was ever brought to court. They are official extortion centers. They extort money from people unwillingly, just as the hostages we talked about a few seconds ago. They extort from you. And if you don't pay, you bear the punishment. That would even include death for not paying them the extortion they want from you. Lest we forget, I think 2019 or before, when they came to Boya, in one of those extortion centers on the road, they call it control. A mother was taking her child to school. They wanted 500 or something. She did not give. She passed. And what happened? They opened fire and killed the little baby. Yes, we are told that gendarme or whoever was there, that officer, was lynched. That's public punishment. Was that enough? Certainly not. What did the administrators of those checking centers controlling extortion places do? What is the explanation? Rather than abolish them, they were reinforced. Control mixed. Control mixed means what? So you have gendarmes, you have police, you have the B, everybody combined. They take the money, they share it, and go through with the Njanga, as we call it in the dog. And so this is criminal state. I don't know what type of state it is. It is beyond legal description. Where officially people are trained, giving money, giving uniforms to go around and extort officially from the population. And the population is so helpless. We've seen them, most Cameroonians, including the Ambazonians back home. Once in a while you find them going to stand on the road. Oh, we don't have electricity. They complain to a certain deal. Oh, we don't have water. They complain to a certain deal. But they have taken this thing too often that nobody ever goes to complain that there are checkpoints on the road harassing us for doing nothing. It has become the norm. To the extent that even our own people, Ambazonians, will apply, beg Yaoundé to bring military camps into their houses because they think they could provide them security. Well, they will provide no security. They will start from you in the first place. They will rape your wife, they will rape your children, they will do what they can without any questions raised. And so, thank God this man, if it is he who causes death, will tell at least the living God is there. Should descend and punish some of those people. Might be, just might be. Their colleagues will see from that and learn something. That even the weakest man has the protection of the Almighty. The man had no gun. He didn't have the arms. He could not even reply with another slap. He simply walked away and said, well, henceforth you're not going to slap anybody anymore. And thank God this got listened to him. Again. This is what we fight. This is a terrorist state, which all dimensions of crimes are beyond imagination. In the last time we just talked about the extortion, the hostage taking. Now we're talking about the extortion which is leading to death. What else would this government not do in Yaoundé? We just talk about their extortion, their inability to provide security in the name of law and order. When somebody will become the accused, a man is falsely accusing somebody, he is let go. The victim who is being accused is kept in custody. And the criminal false accuser goes down, organizes his people, they ransack this guy's property, and they even threaten him with death. What type of state is that? Is it even called a state? It is a state. It is the most lawless state in the world. And so, thanks to that man for having that benediction to take him away. He might not do much, but at least we're discussing his death. We hope others learn from him. The idea of going to the gendarmerie, to the police school, whatever, to be, was not to go and extort people. Just for you to go there, work and earn the salary that you are due. If the salary is too small for you, walk away. We cannot pay you, the state cannot pay you to extort from the civilians, to extort from the people you were employed to protect. And so that it is, God will help us get out of this nonsense. Over to you.
It is a God-ordained struggle, and indeed God will help Ambazonians get out of this point in time. Thank you so much, Barrister Mbeseha, for joining in on Undaunted tonight. But with that, we'll call it a wrap with you. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.
All right, coming up next is news around Africa.
Good day, good day, good day, fellow Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians. I come out this evening. I've been Ambazonia State Army national spokesperson. I come live this evening. I go share special gun salute for all Ambazonians brave state army who will fight on daily basis for defend Ambazonia from the hand of the Babylonian, Paul Biya, Hitler, Bill Vondo, Bartholomew, the terrorists, sponsored by France, the United Kingdoms, and some other criminal Western nations. We don't receive this message when it comes from Goketunja, where General Ole Bro, he don't give 24 hours for this criminal SDO from DOP for release the family and innocent civilians them. Where this Geo from DOP a kidnap them. According to them, they say na family for General never die. Fellow Ambazonians, this ultimatum where they give us all for this Geo. If you fail to take order for releasing innocent civilians, them, they go face the consequences and the wrath from Ambazonia state armies for that area. We don't talk say Ambazonia state armies. Now individual them. When we take on the mantle for defend our people, we take on the mantle for fight justice for Ambazonia. So we as individuals, now we take upon ourselves for join the struggle for defend our people them based on historical fact. So French Cameroon military, they failed to meet up with a defense strategy for Ambazonia. So they turn upon innocent civilians them, kidnap them, punish them for nothing. So we don't take this SDO where it is from top. So if you fail to release those civilians them under their keeping, including a 2-month-old baby, then you go face the consequences. According to the story, they say General never die. You don't capture French Cameroon Gendarme. The truth now say this fight is there between Ambazonia State Army versus French Cameroon occupational forces. So any gendarme, military, gendarme, French Cameroon Army, police, now force occupation is Ambazonia. If we capture any of them, we will shoot and kill them close range, no mercy. So this fight now between us and French Cameroon occupational forces. Our civilians, they be neutral when it comes for this war. So French Cameroon, their power never kidnap our civilians then discover them for nothing. So I send this message. Say make that criminal deal from top where they call Gong Dok Anderson. Make it take special note because after 24 hours of Timotum, it go hear from us in the days ahead. We send this message again once more. Say make Ambazonia them. Make una take special note. Una forget about the riffraff. What they call it Agbobara. We don't collect blood money from French Cameroon. It go on social media on daily basis. It call Ambazonians for take part for this barbaric act where French Cameroon don't kill people them. They call Ambazonians for go out there for support French Cameroon election. We don't tell Ambazonia time and again. Say this criminal Agbobara don't collect money from French Cameroon. You not get nowhere to go. We tell Agbobara say you go vomit that money for French Cameroon. And we tell Agbobara say you don't get nowhere to run and nowhere to hide because you be the biggest betrayer from Ambazonia for the 21st century. So we tell Ambazonians on daily basis, make una take special note. May no man not be a victim because tomorrow, if you involve yourself in French Cameroon election, you go put yourself to blame because.
Well, on the African scene, we see the full extent of the tragedy unfolding in South Africa's Eastern Cape province remaining uncertain as the official death toll from the devastating flood continues to rise. Now, what began as heavy seasonal rainfall has spiraled into one of the most deadly natural disasters in the region in recent memory. Authorities last reported that at least 101 people have lost their lives, but rescue workers caution that the figure is expected to climb further as operations continue. Entire communities have been left reeling with widespread destruction to homes, infrastructure, and essential services, compounding the humanitarian crisis. Tragically, the floods have claimed the lives of 38 children, a stark reminder of the disaster's profound toll on the most vulnerable. The youngest victim is believed to be an infant barely 12 months old, emphasizing the heartbreak faced by families across the province. 7 of the recovered bodies remain unidentified, adding to the anguish of those still searching for missing loved ones. Efforts to locate the 2 children still missing remain a priority for emergency services. However, the ongoing search is being hampered by unstable terrain, damaged roads, and continued rainfall in some areas. Rescue teams, many working under extreme conditions, are combing through debris, swollen rivers, and mudslides in a race against time. In addition to the loss of life, the floods have displaced thousands, with many residents forced to seek temporary shelter in overcrowded community centers or schools. Access to clean water, food, and medical care remains limited in several affected areas, raising concerns about a secondary crisis involving disease and hunger. Government officials have pledged additional resources and have declared certain district disaster zones to accelerate aid. However, residents and local leaders have voiced frustration over the pace of the response and the lack of infrastructure investment that many have helped mitigate the disaster's impact. As the nation mourns, stories of resilience, heroism, and community solidarity have emerged, with neighbors rescuing each other, volunteers distributing supplies, and humanitarian groups mobilizing support. The Eastern Cape, one of South Africa's poorest provinces, now faces a long and difficult road to recovery. While the physical damage can eventually be repaired, the emotional and psychological scars, especially for families who have lost children, may linger on for years. Well, still in Africa, Chadian opposition leader Success Masra ends hunger strike amid health concerns. Success Masra, prominent opposition leader and former prime minister of Chad, has ended his hunger strike after approximately 1 week of fasting. His legal team announced Monday evening Masra, who has been held in detention since mid-May, initiated a hunger strike to protest that he and his supporters describe as an unjust legal process and politically motivated imprisonment. In a public statement released by his lawyers, Masra was described as physically weakened but morally combative. The statement emphasized that he is temporarily halting his hunger strike in order to better prepare for the legal proceedings ahead. Now, President Masra, physically weakened but morally combative, is suspending his food strike and will prepare for the rest of his procedure. The lawyers wrote this. The use of the honorific president by his legal team underscores his standing among his political base and highlights the significance of the leadership within the opposition. According to the statement, Masra's personal physician was recently allowed to visit him in detention and strongly advised him to end the hunger strike due to serious health concerns. His doctor, who was able to visit his bedside and consult with him, strongly recommended that he suspend his difficult and painful decision, especially since the medication he must take requires it. The lawyers explained this, and Masra's arrest came during a tense political climate in Chad, following disputed elections and ongoing civil unrest. His detention has drawn criticism from international human rights organizations and provoked concerns among foreign governments about the state of political freedoms and judicial independence in Chad. Though he has now ended his hunger strike, Masra's supporters say he remains resolute in his struggle for democracy and justice. The opposition leader is expected to continue his legal battle and maintain his political campaign even from behind bars, as national and international attention remains focused on his case. But with that, we'll head on to the news across the globe. The United States Senate has passed President Donald Trump's sweeping tax and spending legislation, advancing a $3.3 trillion plan that reshapes domestic policy, expands tax cuts, and tightens social welfare programs. The measure, which narrowly passed 51 to 50, with Vice President J.D. Vance casting a tie-breaking vote, now returns to the House for final approval ahead of the July 4th deadline. Republicans pushed the 940-page bill through the Senate despite deep division over its fiscal impact. The Congressional Budget Office CBO estimates that the Senate version adds $800 billion more to the national debt than the earlier House bill. If passed, it will raise the national debt to nearly $40 trillion. The legislation cements several of Trump's 2024 campaign promises, including making the 2017 tax cuts permanent and introducing new tax reliefs for tipped workers, seniors, and overtime pay. It allocates tens of billions for immigration enforcement and repeals key climate incentives enacted under the Biden administration. Now, the bill also tightens eligibility for food assistance and Medicaid, a move analysts warn could reduce support for millions of low-income Americans. Some House Republicans from high-tax states remain uneasy about state and local tax provisions, while others are concerned about deep cuts to Medicaid and Medicare funding. Despite these objections, pressure from Trump's inner circle is mounting on House Republicans to unify. The House Freedom Caucus, while pushing for steeper spending cuts, faces internal friction from moderates who argue the bill could harm hospital and rural health services. In addition to authorizing trillions in new spending, the bill lifts the federal borrowing limit by $5 trillion, avoiding a potential debt default this summer that could disrupt global markets. Still, critics argue the long-term effect of the plan could slow economic growth and burden younger generations with higher borrowing costs. Three Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Susan Collins of Maine, and Rand Paul of Kentucky broke ranks to vote against the bill. Tillis, who recently announced that he will not seek re-election, cited fiscal concerns as a key reason. The House, where Republicans hold a narrow 220 to 212 majority, is expected to vote later this week. Now, here is a proofread and restructured version. Well, we see that the headline still on the Global Report has that warning of looming halt. You're welcome back. Well, the World Food Programme has raised the alarm over an imminent halt in food assistance for Sudanese refugees in 4 neighboring countries due to a critical funding shortfall. Without urgent financial support, aid operations in Central African Republic, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Libya could cease within 2 months, exacerbating already dire humanitarian conditions. Over 4 million people have fled Sudan's civil war, now in its 3rd year, seeking refuge in neighboring countries. However, reception and shelter service remain strained by chronic underfunding, leaving displaced populations exposed to hunger and disease. The World Food Programme is urgently appealing for $200 million in emergency funding to sustain its operations over the next 6 months. A senior official from the agency confirmed that the situation has deteriorated to the point where assistance cuts are inevitable without immediate donor commitments. Many refugees are arriving from hunger-stricken regions in Sudan. A recent joint United Nations report flagged the country as being at imminent risk of famine, particularly in areas hardest hit by conflict and displacement. The World Food Programme noted that if food distribution are reduced or halted, children are likely to face heightened levels of malnutrition, worsening an already fragile situation. The shortfall in funding has been attributed to declining support from international donors and the growing scale of humanitarian needs worldwide. Now, despite recent cutbacks, the United States remains World Food Programme's top donor for Sudan. And that was it for tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the recap. On tonight's Undaunted, we brought to you the deadly clashes in Boya's Mile 16 as defiance of Monday goes down sparks gunfire and fire outbreak, as well as the hostage politics, with Colonial SDO detaining innocent civilians, including children, to pressure Ambazonian forces. Ambazonian refugee brutalized in Yaoundé over Baseless witchcraft claim, which is a stark reminder of La République's systemic disdain. And the Colonial checkpoint turning tragic after Gendarme slaps elderly man and dies shortly after. And on the African scene, at least 101 dead in Eastern Cape Flood as rescue efforts continue. Still on the global scene, we also saw the Senate approving Trump's $3.3 trillion tax and spending plan, which sends bill to the House. And that was it for tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. On behalf of the entire Undaunted, we say thank you for tuning in. We leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.